as I introduce Celeste, she gets about a 30-minute spot to share with us some things that are really kind of like it dovetails with Vinnie Tolman's book. Okay, so if some of you are familiar with that, his book, The Light. Oh my gosh, you'll have to help me, Celeste. I don't know, it's on the top of my head. It should
The Light
be
After Death. You're so
The
close.
Light After Death. Yes. And so there is a new book, and this is so exciting. I got myself a couple of these, and I'm actually going to give one away right after her presentation. So this is the workbook that is the newest thing. It is the workbook to accompany The Light After Death. Oh, there we go. The title was right there. And and so it's set up in group programs. And there's 4 different facilitators currently, I believe. And Celeste Edmonds is one of those facilitators. So when we give her that abbreviation of LGL facilitator, it stands for Living God's Light Group Facilitator. And so that's her definition. Her title is the Executive Director of the Christmas Box International, which was it's a charity home basically for children who've been displaced from their homes. And it was set up by Richard Paul Evans. And that's how Celeste and I met, was through Richard Paul Evans events, retreats, that type of thing. And she has done her own book. And so she was with us last summer as that book debuted. She's the author of Garbage Bag Girl. So guess what? Celeste has a story that makes her the perfect executive director of this program. In her childhood, it was an ongoing cycle of police calls, fighting, and physical, sexual, and mental abuse. At the age of 7, she was taken by the state and placed into a child welfare system where moving every few months to a new environment became normal. So did living out of a garbage bag. At age 16, she'd lived in more than 30 cities. Her childhood was a difficult, often unbearable experience where evil manipulation almost broke her spirit. But there were also caring people along the way who stepped in to do what they could to protect and nurture her. And as an adult, she looks back at those moments and realizes they saved her life. So her goal is to help as many children in the welfare system as have opportunities for success, to have those opportunities that she was not provided. It's an emotional book, but she does such a good job in bringing out the spirit of, what would you call it? Not just survival. It is thriving. You thrive.
Yeah, you have to move into that though, right?
Yeah, you get through the survival, and
Part of the work you do is all about that.
Yes. So, are you ready?
I'm so ready.
So ready. So it's good. Well, let's hear. So you're going to share a little bit more about yourself, maybe, and about the Living God's Light.
Yes, it's so relevant because it's like we talk about all the time. It's such a journey. So I'm so grateful to be back with all of you beautiful people. I received some texts and emails from questions that people had that I think will be addressed when I speak, but please throw them in the chat if something comes up for you that you would like me to talk about at the end. I did leave some time for that, to hold some space for that, because I think, at least for me, and I would love to hear other people's opinion, I think that spirituality is sometimes in general a really tough conversation because it's at least one of the most personal conversations we can have. And all morning I've been thinking about, as I meditated, this phrase around the courage to heal. And this summit always reminds me of that. And it's not because we wake up every day brave. It's because we choose to be brave, as somebody recently told me. You don't always feel it, but you need to choose to be brave. And I think the courage to heal requires that bravery. I didn't lose my spirituality because I think as certainly a baby and a small child, we're born with that. We're born with that ability. And then I think, sadly, the things that happen to us along the way have us lose that. So for me, I didn't lose mine until around the age of 15. And I didn't know how important a relationship with my higher power really was. I didn't realize the profound effect that losing this connection would have on my life. So I'm just going to back up a little bit and talk about a little bit about my childhood and how I got to this place at the age of 15. Like Christine said, last year I published my memoir, Garbage Bag Girl, single-handedly the hardest thing I've ever done. So really it was so that the nonprofit organization that I run, the Christmas Box International, would have something to share with our wonderful donors who will likely never meet the children that we serve. Our nonprofit helps abused, neglected, trafficked, and homeless children and young adults find shelter and essential resources that they need while they're in state custody. So I wrote Garbage Bag Girl because I want people to understand the chaos and the challenges that kids like me and many of our children and young adults in foster care face. What do their lives look like? What have they been through? How do we understand what's happening all around us? And more importantly, how do we get involved in that? So Garbage Bag Girl is my story. It's my story of survival and resilience, but ultimately hope. By the age of 2, I was living with my biological parents who were struggling with addiction. And by the big age of 7, I'd learned how to protect my brother and sister from child abusers and drug dealers. Through all of that physical, sexual, and emotional abuse I'd experienced up until then, all I had was this quiet presence of a spirit I didn't know how to recognize. It was always a soft hand that would gently rest on my left shoulder. And I would hear every single time I had these experiences, "You will not die here. You will not die today." And as a little girl, obviously I didn't know the proper words to describe that feeling I had at the time, but it was so common, the feeling and the voice, that it would be the only peace I would ever have. And as an adult, of course, I learned that this was my higher power. My creator was letting me know that there was a better place for me somewhere and someday. I just didn't know what that would be yet. But because of this presence, I was able to, what I learned, as an adult, to disassociate from what was happening to me and stay resolved in my purpose, which at the time was to protect my sister from the abuse that I was experiencing. That became my purpose. So eventually the state intervened, and I lost my brother and sister and my purpose. And I was adopted alone into an extremely dysfunctional, abusive home where my adopted mother treated me as an unwanted outsider. I was trapped in her sadistic manipulation, and every time I would try to tell someone what was happening to me, I would have religion. I would have these people of God that I trusted telling me that the things were best handled in the home. And even when I told them that I was afraid for my life, I was told that God wanted me to go home, that I would be reminded over and over again of how lucky I was because no one wanted to adopt an older child. So by the age of 15, I sadly began planning how to take this mom's life. I just knew that it was going to be her or me. Instead, I made a very brave choice to run away and not allow that to happen and change my life in that way. So I found shelter wherever I could. School bleachers, couches. I believed at that time, though, that even God would not love someone like me, and that this earth was solely a punishment for my existence. I think by being robbed of a relationship with your higher power by the people that you trust, you are robbed of the love that you deserve. So in those couches, in those school bleachers, anywhere that I could find to sleep, I eventually dropped out of school. And I began drinking about a half gallon, or the equivalent of about 7 cups of vodka every day. I would end up at homes and with people I didn't know. And it was nothing short of a compassionate higher power that I would survive until a compassionate woman whom I dedicate my book to. I say she didn't birth me, but she very much gave me life, would take me into her home and give me not only the love I didn't know, but the love I never felt I deserved. So the challenge of growing up with the level of abuse and neglect that I experienced, and that many of the children in our system experience, is that there is such a compounded heaviness of loss and grief and doubt. And it becomes so consuming that your ability to love and grow in healthy relationships is so compromised. So Garbage Bag Girl is my journey. And like many children like me, it's also a testament to the strength it really takes to survive from those very darkest places. But really what is important for me to have you here is that fulfillment isn't something that is just for other people. Fulfillment is confusing because after having these kind of experiences, it's still something that even after you survive, you keep feeling like you don't deserve it. And after my adult adoption, which is talked about in the book, at the age of 26, so my second adoption, I would still spend the next 25 years figuring out through many toxic relationships what I really deserved. Nothing more than the items I put into that black garbage sack all those years is how I felt. I was nothing more important than that. I would also say, though, that loving my children, my own children, was the only thing that ended up giving me a sense of love for my Creator, because it gave me such a connection to something that was so much greater than myself, and started to give me some purpose back into my life. And it wasn't until I met my friend and the founder of the Christmas Box International, Richard Evans, and then authors Vinny and Lenny of The Light After Death, that my perspective took an extreme shift. My experiences sparked this new realization that it wasn't my Creator who abandoned me. It was the human actions that disrupted my faith. And very slowly, and as it is in the journey that we elevate, I began creating and recreating this presence and this feeling with my divine presence that I always try to strive to embrace, whether you envision him as a him, a her, or it's just simply a higher power. Taking this journey of returning to my Creator and writing my memoir, as painful as it was, has provided me the beautiful opportunity to remember the moments he touched my life along the way and reminded me that he was still with me, is still with me. When I was 13, and my adopted mom at the time, my first adopted mom, told us, all the kids, choose who we wanted to live with, because her and my adoptive father were getting a divorce. And I had grown up with so many years of being afraid of her, and I just wanted her acceptance. I wanted her love. I wanted her to choose me. So I lied. I told a really, really big lie. I lied that my adopted father had physically hurt me. And so I chose to live with her. He never did. As a matter of fact, he was the first man at the time to come into my life that had never hurt me. But I craved her love and her acceptance so much that I told this massive lie. And there was a moment right before we left to leave him, this mother and the three of us children, where I was lying directly at his face, and he turned and looked at me with the kindest of eyes. And he said, I see you, and I understand what you're doing, and I forgive you. And unfortunately, it was just a short time after that he would die of a heart attack. And I would never have the opportunity to tell him that I was sorry and ask for his forgiveness. At the age of 15, and drinking myself to death, literally, I would land in these homes that I never should have been in. And there was a very special friend who would find me, bring me a blanket, and make sure that I was safe. And 35 years later, this great friend would circle back in my life to check on me again, and is now my wonderful partner in life. Many hearts have been healed and relationships restored through the writing of my book. And that has happened through the love of God. So again, always is my little reminder, fulfillment isn't something that's for everyone else. It isn't a right that is given to other people. It's also for you. And I believe that a big part of filling the gaps between not feeling fulfilled and feeling fully present is to connect with that higher power. This opens up such a deep spirituality and renewal for the love of your life. And the Living God's Light principles, there's 12 of them that are taught in the Life After Death book. It's a remarkable book of a journey of a man who was pronounced dead and put in a body bag. And it is his story of whom he meets and this path of transformation by living these 12 principles, or I call them habits every day that you practice. They have so inspired me to become a better version of myself and truly a better version of whom I thought would never even be possible. So I invite each of you to consider signing up for one of the facilitated groups. As Christine said, there's a few of us that have been trained. We're not instructors, we're just facilitators that help remind you to take through this 12 weeks, a practice every week in these principles. And maybe it'll be something that also touches your life.
Thank you. I love how you are able to tell such a hard story in such a high frequency. We've been talking all week about frequencies. And I'm wondering, like, would you want to just share a couple of the like concepts from the book, the
principles?
Yes, principles, a couple of the principles. There we go.
Yeah.
You'd work with that. 10 principles. That's awesome.
The 10 principles in a 12-week practice. They are: be authentic, understand the purpose of life, love everyone, listen to your inner voice, use technology responsibly, release prejudice, exercise the power of creation, avoid negative influences, understand the purpose of evil, and know that we are all one. And I'll tell you, if you ever get a chance to meet or even listen to Vinny, he has a podcast as well. He radiates these 10 principles.
When
right?
you look at, this is the wild thing. So we have Vinny's story from our Arise Summit, and we'll have to make sure that, so Joanne, make a note to make it part of the end screen on this presentation, because he's got like 2,000 views, which is really high for my channel. But it was funny because I started looking at like how many people have interviewed Vinny, and there are tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of views on his story. It's like this mind-bending concept that he could have been like literally dead for 45 minutes or longer. I think it actually would have been longer.
Yeah.
But they can document 45 minutes.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then he had this rookie, basically EMT.
Yeah. Do you want to tell more? That was a good story.
Who was not supposed to do whatever the little procedure was.
So he's in the ambulance and he's zipped in the body bag. Okay.
He's in the body bag, and this guy's like, we should try whatever. And the more
he feels a prompt. He gets like there's like a voice.
And the senior EMT is like, no, that's not protocol. We can't do that. And the guy just does it anyway. He feels the spirit to do that. And it saves his life. But this journey that he talks about in the book is he meets his guide named Drake, and he takes him through not being afraid of what he's seeing and not afraid of what that feels like and looks like. And really, for me, reading it, the first time I've read it about 7 times, the first time was really releasing that fear of what that might be like. And then as he takes you through the principles and the lessons that he was taught by Drake, I think the beauty is that the book is small enough to digest, and the principles are easy enough to practice. It isn't one of those, super difficult mind-blowing concepts that you have to keep reading and then you have to go back and read to understand it. It's written in a beautifully simplistic way to understand the light and strength to connect with God, which I love.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And it's, I mean, I think that with the idea, tell me, how did the groups kind of come together? It was kind of a decision to help
Yeah.
people walk through the principles more.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like Lynn and Vinny, the authors, always say that it's always one thing to learn something, and then it's another to practice it, which, you know, because that's mostly what you do, is you really get people together. I think connection and community are ways that we surround ourselves with people that are in what we're in, and these are the same elevated people that are wanting to continue to elevate, that become kind of your spiritual family. And I think that is important, because when it gets hard every day, and even though you're learning principles and you're learning new things, you know, we step out into the real world and it becomes hard to live them when we're uniquely challenged every single day with the complications that life just brings you. And so we decided as a Living God's Light family that, man, we really needed to kind of get our head around how to help people engage and practice. And if we could break down those 10 principles and meet with and bring community together, we would really be a beautiful way to not only help ourselves, but then, you know, as you elevate, the people around you that see you elevate are like, oh, I want some of that. And you just keep perpetually growing this beautiful way of managing through life, that we all know can be very hard sometimes. And so the facilitation became that. It became, how do we facilitate but not instruct?
Yes.
You know, principles that are there, recognizing that, you know, we all wanted to admit we're not the psychologist, we're not the doctor that's sitting in front of you prescribing. We are facilitating the way to practice the principles, which I think is really, really important. We're just like you, and we're on the journey with you.
That's awesome. Okay, thank you so much. So livinggodslight.org if you want to know more. And Celeste, you want to get, maybe you can throw in the chat. I think we've got CelesteEdmonds.com. That's cool. You got your own site under your name. And then I imagine your book is there, or if you want to put in the best.
My book is there
Okay.
in that site. It's also, of course, on Amazon, but it's in there. And then the ChristmasBox.org, if anybody is interested in just our charity and what we do.
Oh,
And
yeah, the charity.
this year we celebrate 29 years of serving more than 170,000 children. So that's a hard number to get your head around. If you need some help, that's like filling Madison Square Garden 7.5 times.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay, now I have to tell you. So Todd and I, so I'm going to introduce Todd, my husband, in just a minute. But Todd and I were able to meet with Vinny. He's got a 2-month waiting list now, but we waited and met with him again. And I said, okay, so is there anything you want us to know about this group that I'm going to have Celeste speak? And he's like, oh, if you've got Celeste, you're good.
Oh.
So here's what he said, though, is he said that he gives you a lot of credit for the Christmas box house still being and being even better than it was. Do you have a quick story on that?
Well, so I helped Richard Evans found it, him and his wife, Carrie, 29 years ago. I actually had started working for him when he wrote his first little green book, The Christmas Box, which is how we got our name, 30 years ago as his personal assistant. And when we launched the Christmas Box International, I was in the organization for about 9 years. And then I stepped out to go into corporate world for 14, served on the board. So I stayed in some capacity, but came back as executive director 4.5 years ago. And unfortunately, there was a loss that had happened in why we structured, what our purpose was as an organization. Our 3 shelters were literally, sadly falling apart. They didn't have the upkeep that they needed. And so the last 4.5 years have been to rejuvenate our partners and the purpose and the mission. And every single one of the shelters has been renovated except one in one section. And we've reactivated thousands of volunteers. So it's really just been about bringing us back to the why. And we have grown revenue over 100%, and we have grown programs over 28% in the last 3 years. So I'm not really someone that believes in staying stagnant. I feel like I want us to help all 1,100 caseworkers in our state. And in order to do that, we have resource rooms in every county. And right now we're in 16 of the 29 counties. So my goal is to get there in the next 3 years and serve every caseworker, meaning we will serve every child in the state of Utah that needs services. So that's the goal. So that's probably what he means by she's aggressively climbing up that hill.
He says, yeah, you're important, and how Christmas Box is still here and doing better than ever.
Well, Richard and I argue who loves it more.
Oh,
he's
that makes
financially
sense.
much more invested than I am, but from an emotionally passionate standpoint, I'm gonna take that one. It's
You
very
get to,
small.
I'll let you take it. There you go. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.